Hello, everybody. Name's Carter Burke. I'm with Tech Solutions. Keith affectionately refers to me as the antenna guy, so I'm the antenna guy. So we're going to talk about the art of new antenna design. And this topic was actually given to me by Blake Crone in the back. So if you don't like it, blame Blake. But what I want to do today is kind of talk about, obviously it's a tin talk, just kind of the mindset we go through when we come out with new antennas and kind of our thought pattern of, we got somebody or an application, where do we go, where do we design the antennas? So I'm not going to give you guys a Wi-Fi radio history lesson, but the takeaway of this slide I want to make sure you understand is we as antenna guys really kind of follow what the radio guys are doing. And Keith, you'll remember this. So I've been in the industry since '98, so I guess I'm becoming one of the older guys here. When I first started, we had access points with one antenna. It was either 2.4 or 900. It was easy. Then it started getting more complicated. We had 2.4, then 5 gig came out. So now we had to have two antennas at the time, and it was kind of an ugly deal. Now everything's kind of obviously gone to dual band, where we have dual band ports. But our job and our goal has always been to stay ahead, or at least in lockstep with what the radio manufacturers are doing. So it's important that we kind of follow it. So steps to being awesome. So these are kind of 4 steps we go through when we're looking at doing antennas. I'm going to need multiple hands, so I'll set this down. But the first thing we do at step 1 is what's the application. So I'll use this antenna as an example. Kristen brought up for me. So obviously we didn't start with this antenna. We started with what we wanted to do, and I was glad Robert, I don't know where Robert's at. He was, Robert, right there. You were talking about stadiums. So the application was people were coming to us and say, hey, we want to build out basketball arenas. Because basketball obviously is popular in the States, as well as hockey. We were like, okay, so first thing we need to do is what kind of antenna type. So if we were going to do a high-density stadium, the first thing we need to decide is that it's going to be a directional antenna or an omni. So the first thing we always do is decide what kind of antenna. In this case, a directional antenna. It was high density, so we did dual polarized directional antenna, but that's kind of what we started with. Obviously, what's the frequency going to be? One of the things we always normally do is dual band. So most of our antennas, in fact, all of our antennas, are 2, 4, and 5 gig. So frequency is important. And what's the gain going to be? And really, the gain and the beam width are going to go hand to hand because it depends on the application. Usually, high density applications. And again, I'm going to jump back to Roberts because he had a similar style antenna. We wanted it to be about 40 degree horizontal, about 50 degree vertical. And because of that, that was going to dictate the gain. So this is actually a 1011 dBi, 10 on the 2.4, 11 on the 5 gig antenna, because that was what it was dictated based on the application. Polarity, again, this is dual polarized. A lot of antennas are vertical. Isolation, very important, and we're starting to see it even more important as we start getting into antennas. Somebody, I can't remember who was talking about earlier about potentially 8 lead antenna. Or eight antenna elements. You got to make sure you have good isolation between them so they don't compete with each other. Environmental. Always got to make sure we have the right environmental for indoor, outdoor. We make ours rated for both. So it works outdoors. It's going to work indoors. Whether you want a pigtail or direct connect, obviously a lot of them come with pigtails. Most of ours are 1 meter. Sometimes you want direct connect. Grounding, very important, as well as the input power. So that's the application. So then what do we do after that? So the next thing we do is we look at the element design. And there's really two ways, and I did this to... So there's really 2 ways. You can either do printed circuit board, which makes sense, or what we call metal or reflective metal. Which way is right just depends on the application. We found with the high density where we're really trying to channel in our coverage, and especially with the dual polarized, using the printed circuit board is better. I could do a whole 10 talk on element design, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but here's an example of the metal. So what we do is once we decide, and really once we decide what we're going to use, then we go into the theory. You do the math, we do it on paper, and then the actual is what actually comes out. Good news is we do have our torture chamber. We put them in the chamber. So step 1's on paper, step 2 is in the chamber after we do our prototype, and then normally step 3 is we tweak it and keep tweaking it until we get the size we want and the performance we want. And then again, we decide what elements we're going to use. I do have a warning, though, and this is specifically for you guys that are traveling. It's called the UC rule. Do not carry this on your luggage ever. Right, UC? Because I'm from South Texas, and if you come look at this, this is exactly like a shell casing. And I guess the airline thought the same thing. So if you're going to use it, don't carry it. But UC is the only marksman for Exceltex right now in the company, so we have him. Anyway, so that's the element. So the third thing we do, and this is really important, give me one of these things here, is the radome design. And I say aesthetics. Aesthetics is always important. Sometimes people say, we don't care what it looks like. No, that's not true. They always care what it looks like. So everything we do is about aesthetics. I even listed it twice. So everything's about how do we make the antenna smaller. That was one thing that delayed this guy coming to market was we kept wanting to make it as small as we could for aesthetics. So how do you make it smaller? The material we use UV stabilized. Always make sure you have it so it doesn't turn yellow in about a year sitting outside. The color is important. We usually stick with just a standard off-white color. One thing we're starting to see, it's actually pretty cool, is people are taking these bigger antennas and we're starting to skin them. But we're skinning them and they're selling advertisement space. So we actually have skins that say Budweiser or that say Guinness. It's actually pretty cool. So instead of it being, you make your Wi-Fi a profit center. And the stadiums are thinking it's kind of cool. Theme parks are covering them up, with Mickey Mouse or something like that, So different ways. And other stuff like backplanes and wheat poles for environmental. And then the last thing, and got into a big conversation with Blake actually at the where most of the real math happens at these shows at the bar, about mounting and how important it is to have proper mounting and good degree markers. Mounting is critical. Making sure you have the right mounting with the antenna when you're designing it's important because obviously you guys know when you get out in the field you want to make sure the mounting's proper to handle wind load and things of that nature. So what could be next? I don't know. I've heard a lot, with this whole advent, obviously, of IoT, and you guys are probably familiar with 802.11 where they're wanting to use 900 megahertz again. Are we going to be able to have a tri-mode antenna with 900? I don't know. The wavelengths in the blue is very large. It'd be a big antenna. Keith, you remember the 900 megahertz antennas? They were this big. They were enormous. But at the end of the day, we're going to see what the big guys are doing, with the radio manufacturers that are out there and kind of follow their lead. So everybody's got this because of the UC rule. They got the antenna. This is just more administrative. And I'm only saying this annexure. One of the things last year in Berlin, I had 10 people ask me, do you guys sell your stuff here locally in Europe? And the answer was no. Now the answer is yes. So we just signed that agreement. We'll actually be housing a ton of our stuff here. Not as a sales pitch, it's because I got the question 10 times is why I'm saying it. Here's my info. If you need me, I do have some cool iSpy Wi-Fi and little RF stickers if y'all want some. I was going to put them in every bag, but I never know if everybody wanted them. They're actually kind of cool. Anyway, thank you.